the medical brands didn't want to be associated because it was associated with death and the sort of things that they were actively trying to prevent. And so that's what I was saying around the storytelling piece. What I had to then do was rework the story so it was less about the death and the horror aspects and much more about high-tech innovation as the film was set in the future. And so when I then positioned it as you get to be seen as a brand that's so forward thinking, it's hundreds of years in the future, and your device is front and center, do you want to be at the head of innovation? Suddenly we got more responses.
Hello, folks. Thank you for watching another Revenue Playbook Chronicles. I am your host, Gene Lytle, and I have Katherine Tuominen here, that is a CEO and founder of Catalyst Brand Strategy, specializing in public relations and communication strategies. She has over a decade of digital marketing experience and a background in film and television with a passion of storytelling. Katherine, welcome. How are you? I'm excited to have you on the call.
Yes, thanks so much for having me, Jean. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. Where are you calling from today?
New York. So yeah, everything you've heard about the heat wave is very much true. I've got the aircon blasting, but that doesn't stop the sun and my computer from overheating. So we're just doing what we can.
Oh my gosh, that is crazy. So what's the temperature now where you're at?
Oh, I couldn't even tell you. It's just astronomical.
Yeah, forget it, right?
Doing what we can.
So we're on opposite sides. I'm in California, and believe it or not, the weather's not too bad right now. Next week it's supposed to get some ridiculous 3 digits, but I'll be inside.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's just staying in and doing what we can.
Yes, absolutely. So Katherine, the last time we talked, you had I think just an amazing experience and journey. And what I want to do is I want to hand this over to you and kind of bring us up to speed to today of how you got started, where you've gone, maybe pivoted, maybe some ups and downs, maybe some solutions that you've came across that put your journey back on track, so to speak. So I'm excited to hear about it, and I'll let you begin, and I may or may not interrupt you in the meantime.
All good. Well, the short version is I started off in the film and TV world. I was very much working in the product placement side of things. So if you've ever been to the movies and seen a superhero drink from a Coca-Cola can, that is product placement. And it really taught me the importance of strategic partnerships and what happens when you get the right brand ambassadors on board who convey the message in a way that's aligned with both what the story represents, but also what the audience is craving or wanting to know more about. And on the flip side, it also taught me that, it doesn't matter how big the brand is, it always comes down to negotiation and, how that partnership makes sense for both parties. So I really learned a lot about that skill early on, which I'm forever grateful for.
It's interesting when you say product placement, people take that for granted, right? Of how products get put into a film or commercial or whatever. How are those decided? Is it literally the highest bidder? Is it, how do those get decided of what's going to be placed in those movies?
Yes, that's fair. Well, I can't speak to today's decision making. Obviously, so much has happened in the film and TV world since I started, a good decade or so ago. I mean, these days it's now all been shifted to the streaming world, and it's a very different landscape. But I certainly think that the core principles remain the same, where it's not just about the highest bidder. It's about really making sure that that brand and the audience that brand buys from is very much aligned with the overall messaging. So there's a lot of different decisions that go into factoring in whether it's worthwhile, but those are some of the key ones that came up even back then.
So is that something that you yourself would research and reach out to them, say, hey, we would like your product in here? Or is there kind of like a standing line of product companies that are waiting to put their product in there?
Both and. So if it was a very unique product, for example, if we were working on a sci-fi film and we needed some kind of high-tech, innovative device, those medical facilities aren't necessarily going out into Hollywood and saying, feature our medical tool in your film. And so that's where we would need to do a lot of research to identify, what are the right types of products for the look and feel of the film vision, and who are potentially aligned partners who'd be willing to, whether it be donate, do a sponsorship, or make some kind of strategic partnership agreement, and then take it from there. So, and of course, there's not just one decision maker, there's a lot of parties that need to approve it. But I was very fortunate to start from the ground. So, very much that research piece of really identifying who are potentially suitable matches based on their overall brand positioning, and then kind of take it from there.
Very interesting. You know what that tells me right away is kind of like you almost need to specialize in different fields. You know, as you find out, you gotta learn about that field to do that research necessary to place that product.
Yes, actually, I'm glad you mentioned that. So, in the case of the medical brand, I was thinking about, because the movie was back then, the one I worked on was set to be a horror. The medical brands didn't want to be associated because it was associated with death and the sort of things that they were actively trying to prevent. And so that's what I was saying around the storytelling piece. What I had to then do was rework the story so it was less about the death and the horror aspects and much more about high tech innovation as the film was set in the future. And so when I then positioned it as, you get to be seen as a brand that's so forward thinking, it's hundreds of years in the future, and your device is front and center. Do you want to be at the head of innovation? Suddenly we got more responses. And so this really tells us, again, it's not about the fancy brand labels or the big celebrities that you attach. It's much more about finding that through line between the two different brands and coming to a strong alignment from there.
Yeah, I can see you're just kind of shifting the story just a little bit to accommodate the person. That's perfect.
Yes. And I mean, it's still true to the story, but we're just highlighting the parts that are most relevant to what they would likely gain from that partnership.
Awesome. So you did that for how long in that side of it before you changed?
Yeah, so I was in and out of the film industry for a good most of my 20s, I want to say. And in between, I would work in luxury sales, high ticket sales departments. So fashion brands as well as watch brands. And so I really got to see the kind of business development side and what happens when you're on the ground and making those conversations and turning them into conversions or purchases at a more large ticket scale. And of course, both the storytelling skills that I picked up from film and TV and the sales skills that I picked up from being on the ground in those retail department stores or representing the flagship brand then led me to what I do today in that digital marketing and public relations field.
So let's kind of touch bases back on the filming and the fashion area. From what I understand it, those are kind of like cutthroat industries, right?
That's
Or
true, yes.
are you protected from that or not? Tell me about that side of it.
Yeah, it's cutthroat. That's putting it politely. I think especially in the media world, I mean, people would literally, well, not literally, you'd hope, but almost literally kill for the role because that back then it was so scarce. People would really do anything they could to get a name in that feature, to be featured in the credits and kind of build up their reputation. I was there both before Me Too and after Me Too. So, there were a lot of internal shifts that were happening in terms of what was socially acceptable and how certain conversations were being held. So it was a very interesting time. And to me, it only reiterated the importance of what happens when people collectively speak up about their rights and bravely speak up when it comes to telling their stories, and then how that can create a movement. So again, it's very clear how that started to inform what I do today, which is working with impact-driven founders who aren't afraid to maybe tackle taboo subjects or address a problem or a elephant in the room and really say, hey, how can we come together to create a really unique solution that will support a better lifestyle and ecosystem for everyone?
So do you think your ability to storytell gives you an advantage over some of the other competition, so to speak, out there that was able to help you land those roles, basically?
I think more from the soft social skills perspective, one of the biggest things I picked up when you're in retail, you're working with the high ticket end, you're working with people who, I had customers come in saying, I just bought an island. And that was a normal Tuesday. And so, the caliber of conversations we were exposed to and the ability to kind of convert that conversation into whether it be a sale or a long-term relationship was a skill that I still very much honor and uphold today. And it can be, people from all walks of life from every part of the globe. And I do think that those soft skills are essential when it comes to representing the nuances that come with different stories, but also the changes that are happening in the geopolitical landscape and how that may apply to the way your brand is positioned.
Got it. So with that, does that bring us to today, or is there a spot before you landed, before you actually started the Catalyst brand strategy?
So just before I started Catalyst, it was during COVID. Well, actually, just before COVID, I furthered my digital marketing studies because I wanted to deepen my knowledge of what it would look like to understand the analytics and the funnels and all of the kind of day to day marketing that's required in a modern campaign. And between that, I was also copywriting, and also I founded a small startup called Culture Cure. And it was really about what I witnessed and experienced around toxic workplace culture and what the solutions were out there. And back then, there weren't any resources available to someone who had been through that toxic workplace covered and needed recovery support. So, yes, they could go to a therapist. Yes, they could potentially make a dispute and take it to a lawyer. But there was very little specialist that could actually really unpack what had occurred, whether it be from a groupthink perspective, a mobbing perspective, or even from a systemic level, and then help them to recuperate and then basically apply and get back to the working world. So it really taught me a lot about, well, all the things that you learn in the startup space. Back then, actually, there was no AI. Well, there was AI, but not in the scale that we know today. And so I was learning about, the startup world for the first time. I was learning about fundraising, how to put together a platform, how to build a community, and all those things. And while I really appreciate that time, it did coincide with COVID. So we decided to fold it in during that period as we weren't able to really build the traction that we could during such uncertain times. And I focused more on copywriting, which I was able to do remote. And that is what ultimately made me cap out as a freelancer with too many clients. And so I reached out to a friend of mine who was an art director, and we worked on a project together. And that's just snowballed into what the agency is today.
So was there a scary time when you're literally going out on your own? And I mean, there's so much you had to learn different than what you've already learned already. And were there some issues? Were there some worries whether you were going to be able to make it happen or anything like that? Or was it just instant success?
Definitely not instant success. I think, like many founders, there's bumps in the roads. You're pivoting, you're learning new things, you're very much flying the airplane as you build it, as they say. And in my case, I was fortunate to have the support of family and friends. They kind of knew, once I put my mind to something, I'll make it happen. But from a wider lens, there was no guarantee. I was very much risking everything, my time, my funds, my even potentially turning down job prospects, all just to go all in on this vision. So again, I always kind of think about what you say at your deathbed, and if you have any regrets. And that's, I think, a big part of what pulled me through. At the end of the day, the potential gains of really chasing my dreams and pursuing this vision I had outweighed any fears that I may have had about staying stuck or in the same place I had already known.
So, Katherine, did you have any formal education for the roles that you're playing now, or was it just on the job learning? How did that start out?
Yeah, so I did have a formal education. The short version is I majored in screen and cultural studies, which is a fancy way of saying writing in all its different storytelling forms. And that was in my bachelor. And then I furthered my education in production. So that was more around how to, films are kind of like a mini startup. It's like how to get your crew together, how to, get the right equipment, ask for strategic partnerships, go for grants, things like that. So I learned a lot of that. And then I furthered my marketing studies, as I said, through a postgraduate degree. And that allowed me to really understand, I guess, the sales psychology and marketing ecosystems and best practice. And then the rest of it was very much just learning on the job, latest technology, how to build this, how to fine tune that, and taking it from there.
Very nice. Very nice. Because I noticed, I was looking at my notes. I go, I never did ask you if you started in that direction or if you ended up pivoting and moving into the direction. So you did kind of pivot a little bit. Do you have any ambition to get back into the film and TV, or you like where the trajectory that you're headed now?
Oh gosh, that's such a great question. I will always have such a sweet spot for the film industry and world. There is nothing like being on set with a crew that absolutely loves what they're doing and is doing it with, every fiber of passion that they can. And yeah, I think it's a very special space. It's what I would imagine kind of like being in a circus is like, where you go from one film to the next with your crew and just keep building great things. And I think that it very much kind of sparks this inner child of play and flow. Yes, there's business and seriousness to it too, but I think at its heart, a lot of people share that same kind of passion for story and joke around with film quotes and things like that. It's forever going to be special for me. Um, but with that said, I absolutely love what I'm doing today as well. I think it's a new way of telling stories, and I find it very fascinating from more of an analytical lens. But also to really see that the brands and companies we partner with now, they are changing lives, whether that be through their practice, because they're doctors, or because they have released a product that is truly helping people sleep better or improve their overall well-being. So I'm still very much feeling that impact of storytelling firsthand.
Very nice, very nice. So tell me about Catalyst brand strategy. Kind of give me like a snapshot of what is going on in your business, kind of your day-to-day work environment, what it looks like with your current clientele, and then maybe move into what's happening, what trends are going on in today's market that's affecting that business or not affecting or helping or hindering.
Well, like everyone in the digital space, we've seen significant shifts thanks to the mass adoption of AI being what it is. So, for PR specifically, we've noticed that the publications that feature brands actually directly correlate with what gets shown up on these AIO, GEO, whatever you want to call it, these AI tools. And so we've noticed that there's actually a spike in demand for public relations because people recognize that if you can get featured in a publication that's respected, credited, weighted significantly in these algorithms, you're much more likely to show up in that top search bar before it even starts scrolling to page one, page two. And so, for this reason, I think that brands are recognizing if they can get in early while these platforms are still learning, then they're at an advantage than kind of joining in later when the learning's already much further along and it's more competitive. So, from that standpoint, there's definitely been a huge shift. And then beyond that as well, because almost anyone can tell their story on any platform, we're noticing that there's a lot of misinformation, especially when it comes to the wellness and healthcare industry. And consumers are just completely overwhelmed, don't know where to turn, and just frustrated in general. So, with that said, we really take it upon our, I guess, core ethos to make sure that we're able to accurately represent the brands, but also that we're mindful of compliance, governance, and the kind of legal policy changes that might be occurring within that industry to accurately represent the brand and also convey relevant information to the readers or audiences that are trying to really unpack, how can they improve their health and well-being.
So how do your clients come to you? Are they just pretty much referred to you, or do you actively go out and look for them? And then what would be your ideal client?
Yes, so in terms of our outreach methods, we do a mix of cold email outreach and LinkedIn outreach, as well as speaking at various events with our ideal target audience, and of course, referrals and existing partner relationships where they may refer. So it's a great kind of ecosystem that allows us to continue serving people who we truly believe in and the brands that they are building. So in terms of our typical brand, we sort of say that we specialize in the health and wellness industry, but more specifically, if you imagine the health and wellness world, on the left side, we have the scientific spectrum where it's very much about the medical model, big pharma, that end of things. And then we have the right end of the spectrum where it's almost more like well-being, debatably snake oil, spirituality, and all sorts. And so we love to say that we work in this middle balance where we honor the whole person and we recognize that it's more than just diagnosing them with the first thing that they may see. And instead, it's really about looking at that whole person's life, their well-being, their ecosystem, and how we can best support them. So elements such as the longevity industry, med spas, things like this are a great example of that approach. And of course, it is evidence-based and science-backed.
Very nice, very nice. So you're about a decade in, right? With there, are you inside the business now, or are you slowly putting yourself outside and other people are starting to do all the work for you, or are you still
So
deep into it?
for transparency, we're 4 years in to Catalyst specifically. And in terms of where we're at, I would say I'm learning to step away. We're not fully automated in the way that, of course, many of founders grapple with, but with the use of AI and the systems that we're building out, I'm finding it easier and easier to step away and trust the team. And it's almost more of a mindset thing than anything else, isn't it? Where just, you know the team is great, you can very much lead them to it. The system's there, the infrastructure's there. It's just a matter of letting them do what they do best. So we're in that phase right now, which is quite exciting.
So with your storytelling ability, do you prefer fiction versus nonfiction? And if so, do you ever have an idea of maybe writing a book or a movie or something like that that could be later on in your episodes that you want to do?
That's such a great question. I love that. Well, I do think I will eventually write a book one day. Don't know quite what or when, but I'm sure it'll come to me when the time is right. And we work with a lot of doctors or founders who have actually published a book because of that exact reason. They just, they have so much lived experience. They were like, I don't want this to live in my head. I want this to be shared with the world. So I don't think, any one medium is dying or outdated. I just think it takes new shape and can be shared in different forms. So yes, I guess we'll have to watch this space.
Right. So we might have to do another one of these when that starts happening, right?
Yes, absolutely. I look forward to it. Great idea.
Awesome. So maybe down the road, but do you have some specific plans for your business or for you or goals that you do know that you're striving for?
Yes, at the moment, we're very focused on building a deeper level of thought leadership in person events. So, whether that be speaking opportunities as a keynote or a panelist or building these sort of referral networks at expos. So, that's where I'm spending most of my time and energy, which often means I'm flying interstate between these different events. But it's very fun and I love meeting people in person. It's definitely nice in a post COVID world to get back to these elements. So, other than that, we're also very focused on event activations. So many of our brands like to host physical events where they bring together community members, work with different vendors and partners, and basically raise awareness around a specific initiative. So we are recognizing that there is almost this return to form in terms of going more analog, stepping away from the screen, and really connecting together as a community to learn something new and build these deeper connections.
Sweet, sweet. Man, I don't know that I could go inside that realm and fit. I think I'm creative, but I think I'm just too, I don't know, maybe not as robust in going out and saying, I can do this for you. I want to do this for you. I'm more of that laid back, kind of chilled out person that say, hey, how you doing? Hey, maybe I can do a little bit something for you. I don't know that I could be in that competition, that, that fast pace.
That's fair. It sounds like you're, as they say, type B versus type A. Have you heard of this?
No, tell me.
Oh, that's fair. I don't know if this is zillennial, but yeah, it's a known thing that people who are type A are like the proactive ones with their planner and they're color coded and they love going out there and getting organized and feeling like we can do it. We'll be proactive and make it happen somehow. And then there's the type Bs who are like it'll happen, but we don't have to have an exact checklist or an exact kind of super specific down to the dots and T's plan. We'll sort of see how it flows and go from there. So I think there's a strength in both types. And it's a shame to see that sometimes just one type can be perceived as the right way to do business. But I completely disagree. I think imagine how crazy the world would be if we were all like go-getters, maximizing every second.
Right. So I would say I fit in the B. However, I have been accused of jumping off a cliff and then trying to figure out how I'm going to land. So it just kind of depends, I guess, on this subject. So
yes, that's fair, exactly. And I think it's not as binary as one or the other. Sometimes, like you said, it might depend on the situation.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so now we know where you're going. We hope. I'd like to see a book or something later on. I think that would be cool.
Oh, thank you.
Is it going to be fiction or nonfiction, you think?
Oh gosh, that's a challenge. I would probably do both, to be honest, because I love learning and challenging myself. So I would maybe start with the nonfiction side and then go into fiction. But yeah, who knows?
I think that would be so awesome. So if, let's say our clientele, it's that time for this question that I always ask all my guests, is like, if our guests didn't get our entire message or they got busy and they have to listen to it again, but there's one message that you wanted to make clear that you left them with, what would that be?
From today's call, I would say the one takeaway I would recommend anyone to absorb, whether they are in corporate, thinking of starting their business, or very much in the weeds of running their business, is if you are considering a strategic partnership, whether that be with a co-brand, a referral partner, any kind of partnership, definitely think about what the through line is and ways to connect both sides of that party. So, what are their goals and objectives and their kind of core brand and story, and how does that complement and relate with yours? And that's a much better place to start a working relationship than sort of handing out your offering or saying, here's what we're doing without necessarily fully understanding the scope of their focus and what some of those, I guess, story elements may be. So that would be the number one advice I have. And it's applicable across anything, whether it be, influencer marketing, even negotiating media coverage. It's a useful skill across the board. And I think always looking at what would they most benefit from this relationship is a good way to flip that conversation and really build meaningful conversations.
I like that. Well said. And I think that's very helpful. It just kind of struck a different question in my head. So let's say a clientele comes to you and says, hey, we're interested in having you represent us. Is there a kind of a checklist or something that you need to fulfill before they even qualify or before you decide you want to take it on? If there is, can you kind of take us through an example?
That's a great question. There is definitely. So they have to have something that's newsworthy, quote unquote. We don't decide what's newsworthy, the general media does. And this can be according to what's known as editorial calendar dates. So we all know the big hallmark holidays, but there's also sub holidays like Self Care Awareness Month or Day, or there's a kind of holiday or theme that might be coming up, or even policy changes. So the importance is to know how what you're bringing to the table directly links with these newsworthy calendar dates. And that will help journalists as well as ourselves say, we can cover this. There's a lot to talk about here, and it's very likely to get pickups and receive coverage because it's relevant to the wider conversation of what's happening in this space or sector. So that's the one thing that we would start off looking at. The second thing is, of course, as I kind of touched on earlier, the evidence-based evaluation of what you're bringing to the table. We have to make sure that you haven't misinformed the public in any way or overreached some of the stats and analytics or even testimonials that may be shared. So we do want to do our due diligence when it comes to ensuring the accuracy of what that brand is representing. And then maybe the last piece as well is a conversation I often have with founders versus brands. So many founders don't actually want to be in the spotlight or receive coverage as a founder. They would prefer for the brand to have its own story and exist without them. And so we have to have an early conversation about how involved they want to be as a founder, and if not, how to best position the brand to lead and who could potentially be a face of the brand or offer quotes or story elements to better inform the heart of the brand so it doesn't just feel like basically a sponsored piece.
Very nice. Katherine, you have been an awesome guest. Do you have any final thoughts for us?
Well, maybe as a final thought, if someone is thinking about public relations, we often get people thinking of it as like a last step. So they'll say, we're now doing well, it's time to do the publicity piece and take this to the next level. But actually, we recommend flipping it, especially in the current AI climate, to think about what is one kind of small step you can take to really start shaping your brand narrative. And that can be DIY, it can be in-house, a PR intern. There's a lot of ways to start this even at an early stage scale. Or if you're in that middle mark, even connecting with a strategic advisor to kind of say, hey, these are some of the gaps in your current messaging that really should be honed in on sooner than later.
Katherine, what is the best way for someone to get a hold of you and your firm?
You're welcome to reach me at www.catalystbrandstrategy.com. We offer complimentary sample sessions, which unpack some of what we've discussed today. And then we also offer a free list of 1,000 speaking opportunities. So you're welcome to basically just opt in your email address and you'll receive that as well.
Very nice. Katherine, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm already going to put you on my notes for check in with you a little later to find out when that book might start materializing. I'm excited.
Pressure's on.
Folks, thank you for watching another episode of Revenue Playbook Chronicles. Again, I'm your host. If you liked our content, please like, smash, comment. Somebody says you can hype now. Just go ahead and whatever buttons you have, push them all. We appreciate it. It really helps our channel. And we will see you on the next one.